Right. So, guys, girls, let's run through these. I helped a couple with you with some of them, and there's still some stuff you forget. If you take the square root of both sides, you have to remember to have it as a plus and minus answer. Okay. So the first four, well, 1 and 2, you just take the square root of both sides. The third one, you have to first off start out by dividing by 3. So treat that as 3x equals 48. So if you divide both sides by 3, you're going to get there first. That's going to be x squared equals 16. And then if you take the square root of each side, you wind up with plus or minus 4. Okay? And again, so we write plus or minus 4, but that's positive 4 and negative 4 are the answers. All the way around, please, because you're being rude. Okay? All right, 4, 5, and 6, you have a first step to do. For number 4, divide each side by -2 first. And then you get x squared equals 36. That gives you x equals plus or minus 6. Number 5, you add 9 to both sides first. So when you solve that, you wind up with x equals plus or minus 3. And number 6, divide both sides or multiply both sides by -1. It's going to give you the same result. So you get x squared equals 196. Square root both sides. 196 is the same thing as plus or minus 14. Yeah.
Wait, so for number 9, what did you do with 3?
Okay, I'm at 6 right now.
Oh, okay.
But I'll get there. All right, so the first couple was basically you had one step to go and start to solve it. So you might have had to multiply or divide or add or subtract in order to move stuff over to the opposite side. And then we get down to 7, 8, 9. Let's see how much I can squeeze on there. Squeeze all the rest on there. Okay, so let's take it slow. Number 7, we have a whole quantity that's being squared. So x minus squared, or x minus 2 is being squared. To undo that, I'm going to take the square root of that whole side. If I take the square root of 25, I get plus or minus 5. But then I get x minus 2 is equal to plus or minus 5. That's the same thing saying x minus 2 equals 5, x minus 2 equals negative 5. So I'm going to add 2 to both sides in order to solve that. So what I'm doing is I need to get x by itself, so I'm going to add 2. So I go 2 plus 5, that's 7, and 2 minus 5 is negative 3. I just write the answer like this because I've seen teachers write it as 7 comma negative 3, and then students start confusing that as a point. It's not a point. It's 2 individual answers. Okay? Problem number 8 is going to be done the same way. We have a whole quantity, x plus 5 squared. So to undo that, I'm going to take the square root of each side. That gives me x plus 5. Square root of 36 is plus or minus 6 if I've done the square root of both sides. Subtract that 5. So I get negative 5 plus 6, which is going to give me an answer of 1. Negative 5 minus 6 is going to give me an answer of negative 11. And then number 9, Reese, you just asked about this one. So I have x minus 2 quantity squared. But in front of that, I have a 3. So I have to start unpacking it. Okay? So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to divide both sides by 3. And if I do that, let's see, I should be able to do this. If I do that, this and this are going to cancel out. And that's where the 100 comes from. Is that okay so far?
Yes.
And then if I take the square root of both sides, I get x minus 2 equals positive or negative 10. Add 2 to both sides right here. So 2 plus 10 is 12. 2 minus 10 is negative 8. Does that one make sense? So again, you have to manipulate it a little bit to do it. You don't go and take the square root of both sides because the 3 is not being squared right now. It's just the x minus 2 that is. Number 10, I have a negative out in front. So if I multiply both sides by a negative 1, like this is suggesting, that'll give me x minus 2 quantity squared. X minus 2 quantity squared equals 16. I don't want to have the negatives. Take the square root, I get plus or minus 4. So x minus 2 equals plus or minus 4. If I add 2 to both sides, 2 plus 4 is 6. 2 minus 4 is negative 2. Again, 2 answers. Again, we're talking about the fundamental theorem of algebra. If your highest exponent is second power, you could have up to 2 answers. So a lot of times you're having two answers, but we discussed yesterday one you could have one, and that's it. The whole thing. If you're taking the square root of 0 on both sides or something like that, that's going to take place. So number 11 gets unique. Number 11, we have kind of a lot going on. So again, we have to start unpacking it a little bit. I'm not going to go and divide by 5 first. I think I'm going to move that 45 over, so I'm going to do the opposite to it. Okay, that gives me 5 quantity x plus 1 quantity squared equals 45. Then divide each side by 5. So again, this is going to cancel with this. That's going to reduce to 9. Take the square root. Square root of 9 is plus or minus 3. So I'm going to subtract 1. Negative 1 plus 3 is 2. Negative 1 minus 3 is negative 4. Number 12, I'm going to subtract 11 from both sides. This is going to give me a negative answer, but then I'm going to go and change. Yeah. Does it need to be with you guys, or are you okay?
No, he's good.
Perfect, thanks. Which one am I on? I'm sorry. 12? Okay, so I subtracted 11. Then, at this point, multiply both sides by the negative 1. That's going to change the signs. So then I get plus or minus 6. Add 2. So 2 plus 6 is 8. 2 minus 6 is negative 4. Okay? Pausing up through number 12. Take a good look. Do you see what we're doing? I've tried to write the steps down. But if you need more clarification, please let me know. Yeah, they brought one yesterday, and I was like, no, he's absent. All right, number 3, you're going to start out by moving the 5 over. Okay, so those cancel each other out. Then I get negative 4, and there's no negative out in front here. So I'm not dividing both sides by a negative. If I take the square root, I get the square root of a negative number. That falls under it's not one of the real numbers. Okay, it's part of the imaginary numbers or the complex numbers. Okay, so we just go ahead and list at this point, this is no real solution. But I don't want you to confuse this with, say, number 10. If you look at number 10, how we started it, there is a negative over here. Don't jump to the conclusion that's no real solution, because you have to divide both sides by the negative 1 first, or multiply both sides by negative 1 in order to get the negative out of here, and that made it positive. Let's see, number 14, I'm subtracting 10 from both sides. Those cancel out. Negative 5, quantity x minus 1 squared. Negative 10 minus 10 is negative 20. Again, this is now a scenario where we have a negative on both sides. Okay, that's similar to number 10. Okay, I'm going to divide both sides by negative 5, so that cancels this. Negative over negative is positive. Take the square root of both sides, so I get x minus 1 equals plus or minus 2. So I'm going to get x plus 2, which is 3, and x minus 2, which is negative 1. And then number 15, we have, we're going to subtract 1 from both sides first. Take the square root. Remember, I have this whole quantity that's squared, so in order to undo it, this and this undo each other. They're gone. Notice where it went to the next step. It's gone. Okay, square root of 9 is going to be plus or minus 3. I'm going to add 1 to both sides, so I get 3 plus 1, which is 4, and I get 3 minus 1, which is 2, or excuse me, negative 3 plus 1, which is negative 2. Divide both by that. Notice these are my two answers. Reduced, that goes to that. Reduced, that goes to that, and that one happens to stay negative. Okay, so that right there that's everything for this particular thing, this problem. Okay, you feel okay with it? Anybody stuck? Make sense? Any other questions? Okay, I want to walk through worksheet number 7. Yeah.
So I was confused on why for number 15 the square root and to the second power would cancel each other out to get to that minus 1.
Can I hold on that question? I'm going to come back to it as soon as I just start doing notes. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay. And I think I can answer that. Can I clear this? Does anyone need this? Okay, now we're going to walk through worksheet number 7. We're going to do it as a class. Let me get rid of this. All right, so let's talk about exactly what you just said. Let's say we had, this is not on that worksheet yet. Let's say I had this. Is that okay? All right, so this whole quantity, this whole part right here is grouped together by parentheses. And that whole part grouped together by parentheses is being squared. So technically, this means the same thing as this. Okay? Which means if you FOILed this out, that's basically how you go about that problem. But if we have something that's listed as a perfect square, that, hey, all right, we got a keyboard now. All kinds of surprises come up. So what we're going to do on this problem is this. I'm going to take, guess what's coming up? Jeez. Get out of here. Ah. If I take this, really? All right. If I take the whole square root, this and this cancel each other out. It's the key to unlock the door. They're gone. Okay? So that just means that 5x minus 1, you can keep it in parentheses if you want, but you don't necessarily need it, is the same thing as the square root of 5x minus 1 as a quantity squared. So the square and the square root cancel each other out. Remember there's an imaginary little 2 right there that we don't really put? Those are the keys to unlock the door. And that's what's going to give you plus or minus 3, the square root of 9, and then, so you have 5x, and then you get 1 plus 3, and you get 1 minus 3, which is 4 and negative 2, and then you divide everything by 5. That's your answer. Does that make sense?
So it only cancels each other out when it's perfect square is your answer.
No, well,
I mean,
if like, oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Let's say that this is, let's change one thing up here. Let's change this to 7. And this would stay at square root 7, and then this would have been square root 7 plus 1 or something like that, and square root 7. So you can keep a radical as a radical. Yes, your calculators will give you a decimal approximate. A lot of times you want to leave a radical as a radical, though, if it doesn't break down perfectly. That's where a lot of students in Algebra 1 want to make an error. Go and put my calculator shows this. You're absolutely right. But if it's not a perfect square, but they think, oh, because my calculator shows me a decimal that's 10 places big, it's an exact answer. It isn't. It was rounded, truncated off. It's an irrational number a lot of times. Okay, so let's have you guys try 1 through 8 on worksheet number 7. That's on page 74, and I'll write them up. Try 1 through 8. I'll come around and help you if you need any help. Let's try these real quick. Try those. We'll see how we do. Yeah. All right, first one, square root of 20. So remember, I'm not looking for you to break this down just on your calculator. I don't want you on your calculator going, oh, it's 4 point forever. Okay? I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for it to be an exact answer. If it's going to be an exact answer, we're going to keep a radical. So I have to realize that 20 is the same thing as 4 times 5. Now, some of you might have chosen 2 and 10. Great. But what is 4 and 2 and 10 aren't? It's a perfect square. So that means that this is the square root of 4 times the square root of 5. I can break apart these. Square root of 4 is what? 2. So I did 2 square root 5. And that's the exact answer to this. Okay? It's just broken down a little bit nicer. Okay? What about square root 8? What am I going to go with it? Back.
4 times 2 and then
Right, there you go. 4 times 2. The square root of 4, this is going to be the same thing as this. Square root of 4 is 2, so you get 2 square root 2. So 2 square root 2 is the same thing as square root of 8. Okay? So the third one, we have 2 square root 45. So if I take the square root of anything, what is that 2 outside going to do to it? It's going to multiply it. Does that make sense? All right, so let's break 45 down. George, can you help me out? What is 45? What times what? 5 times 9. I like it. Okay, and that means that's the same thing as this. Do you all agree with that? Now, some of you are like, oh, why didn't you write the 9 first? Because I didn't. Okay, remember, multiplication, you can write it whatever order. So the square root of 9 is how much? So this gives me an answer of what? 3. So I have 2 times 3 root 5, which gives me 6 root 5. So 6 root 5, or 6 square root 5, is the same numeric value as 2 square root 45. Again, we just broke down the radical. Number 4, we have a, yeah, go ahead.
So like, it feels like 9 times 5 instead of 5 times 9. Would you multiply it?
So if I did this, and that's going to be 2 times 3 times, which is the same thing. Again, it's called the associative property. A times B is the same thing as B times A, where A and B represent numbers. So that's all we're using. So I put it backwards just so to catch you and make sure you. Okay, the fourth one though. Could I write this as this? Does that mean the same thing? Absolutely. What's the square root of 4? 2. What's the square root of 5? So 2 over 5 is the answer.
Square root of 5.
Oh, square root of 25. I'm sorry. Square root of 5, we don't know. It's 2 point something. All right. So that answer comes out to 2 over 5 for an answer. Is 2 over 5 an okay answer? It is a fraction, but it is what it is. Okay? All right. So as we move down, so remember, I'm doing, if I could do that, what can that be then? Root 25. What's the square root of 25? Done. Okay? Let's see. Crystal, can we break 63 down? What 2 numbers give me 63? And I want one of them to be a perfect square if you can. 7 and 9. I like it. Okay? Which means that's the same thing as this. And remember, I could have had those flip-flop. Same thing, right? What's the square root of 9? 3. So this is going to be 5 times 3 times square root of 7. So 5 times 3 is 15 root 7. I like it. Okay, so 15 square root 7 is the same thing as 5 square root 63. Where do you want to approach this next one? Mac, what do you think? Just check that. 2 times 18 is what? 36, yeah.
Alright, so then you do 2, or 9 root 9 times 4 in a square.
What's the square root of 36?
5, 6. And then
Or you could have done 9 times 4 and broken that piece of it. So, good call. What about square root 24? Square root 24, is 24 a perfect square? Yay, nay, maybe? No. Can I break 24 down though?
Yes.
What does 24 break down as far as perfect squares? Now some of you are thinking 3 and 8. Some of you are thinking 2 and 12. 3 and 8, 2 and 12 aren't going to work. 4 and 6 will work. Why is 4 and 6 the one I'm looking for? 4 is perfect square. Okay? Does everyone get that? Everyone okay with that? So think about this. 24 is the same thing as 2 times 12. It's the same thing as 3 times 8. But 4 times 6 is the better one to use because 4 is a perfect square. Okay? So I have square root of 4 times 6, which is the same thing as square root 4 times square root 6. So what's my answer? 2 root 6. Hey, guys and girls, I have a question. Last night, we had plus and minus for answers. Now we don't. What is different? Do what? It's still in radical form, but why don't I have plus minus with these answers? Why is there one answer? What happened? What did we twist up? What had we done with last night's homework? So flip back one page real quick. Take a look at how those problems are set up. What do I have on page 73 that makes these different than page 74? Go ahead, Bo. Yeah, you had x squared and you're trying to solve it, so you had to do the square root of both sides. But these already have a square root, so there's not a plus minus answer. Okay? Can I get rid of these? Everyone feel okay about them? Okay, would you guys work on 9 through 14? And I'll give you 3 minutes to get a good try for 9 through 14, again on page 74. Let's walk through them. Shh. Help me out. What? Preston, what should I do as my first move up here?
Well, you see you have that figure. You don't want that figure.
What do you want me to do with it?
I want you to plus it on both sides.
Good. Everyone with us so far?
Yeah.
All right, then what?
Now you take the square root of x and multiply.
Okay, so square root, and x is equal to what?
5.
Close. Plus or minus 5. Okay? So I took the square root of both sides, so I have to have that plus minus in there now. Okay? So that's where that little curveball comes in that a lot of times people might forget. Okay? Celine, help me on the next one. Subtract the 17 from both sides. I like it. Everyone still with us?
Yeah.
Okay, so I get x squared is equal to 20. What should I do to both sides? Root. Okay, now being I did that, there's a plus minus. So I'm going to get x is equal to plus minus 20. I know is 4 times 5. Square root of 4 is what? 2. So this is going to be plus or minus 2 square root of 5. That's my answer. Right there. See where I got it? Mm-hmm. Starting Thursday and then finishing Friday.
Do we have homework to test every single day?
Yeah, you will. But you'll be all right. You'll be fine.
I'm going.
God, trust me. All right, Gage. Where should I go on this next one? Do what? Add 5. I like it. If I add 5 to both sides, I get 2x squared is equal to, I think that's 72. Is that okay? What's next, Gage?
Square root.
You're real close, and I can see why you'd make that error, but what should I do right before that? Take a look. Well, 2 and x squared are being held together by multiplication. So what undoes multiplication? Divide. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2 first. Okay? So 72 divided by 2, I think, is 36. Is that? Gage, what should I do now, buddy? Square root both sides. What's the square root of 36? There you go, plus or minus 6. Why is it plus or minus? Because I took the square root of both sides. If I'm just looking for a radical answer and I didn't do the square root of both sides, I don't have a plus minus answer. Okay? So those are the first 3 worked out. Why don't you guys try the next couple? I'll give you another minute to work on those next couple.
Well, at least.
All right. TJ, help me out. What should I do here? Divided by 16. I like it. Now, am I going to go 25 divided by 16 on my calculator right now? No. Okay, so this cancels this. I get x squared is equal to 25 over 16. Leave this as is because I'm going to take the square root of both sides. And that's going to give me, remember that's going to be plus minus answer. What's the square root of 25? What's the square root of 16? So plus or minus 5/4 is the answer. That right there is why you didn't just go 25 divided by 16 on your calculator. You might want to carry it through. It might work out. Okay? Casey, what's the first step on this next one? Oh, yeah, buddy. Subtracting 3, I like it. I like it a lot. So that and that cancel out. That leaves me this. That gives me negative 36, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah.
I'm going to divide it both sides by what? Negative 9. Okay? So, now, this one might be one I can reduce. Negative over negative is positive. 36 over 9 is what? 4. So if I take the square root of both sides, remember I got plus minus, x equals plus or minus 2. Good job. Mr. Kruger, what you want to do on this next one?
First, take away 8.
I like your thought, but I'm not going to take away 8, and this is why. It's already a minus 8, so what's the opposite of the minus? There you go. Okay, add an 8 to both sides. That cancels that, so I get 4x squared equals, I think that's 216. Now what, Mr. Kruger?
Divide 4x by 4.
Divide both sides by 4, so that cancels. Okay, so 4 goes into 25 times. 4 goes into 16. 54. Last step. Root. Sound good?
Yeah.
So square root. Now, 54. I got plus or minus root 54. Does 54, is it one number times another, and one of those numbers have to be a perfect square, do you think?
Yeah.
What do you think?
9.
9 and 6, I like it. So if you break 54 down, so square root of 9 is 3, so I'm going to get x equals plus or minus 3 root 6. Sweet. Okay? Try the next 3, please. Try the next 3, please. So 15 through 17, please. What's my very first step on this problem up here? On number 15. And I'll remind you, I have a quantity that's squared. So how do I undo a quantity squared? Do what? I don't need to distribute on this one. So let me ask you this. How would I undo this? X squared, though. What undoes squared? Square. So yeah, this is square root, and that gives me x equals plus or minus 5, okay? So I'm going to treat this just like that, okay? So what should I do to both sides first? Again, I'm treating this just like x. So what, square what of both sides? Square. Okay, square root. So I get x minus 2 is equal to plus or minus 5. What's my last step to get x by itself? Do what? Add 2 to both sides. Good. So I get x equals 2 plus 5 and 2 minus 5. So 2 plus 5 is 7. 2 minus 5 is negative 3. There's my 2 answers. Okay. Ben, what should I do first?
You distribute 2 to x.
I would agree with you, but I have x minus 3 as squared, not as just x minus 3.
Okay, so you square root that.
Not quite yet either. Again, you're going to work this problem. This problem is going to look like this. So how would you work this problem? Divide by 2. I'm treating that just like an x right now. So what should I do first on this problem? Yep. So I'll get rid of that. So I divide each side by 2. So I get x minus 3 quantity squared equals 8. Is that okay? Square root both sides. Do you agree? Don't forget the plus minus now. So I get x minus 3 equals plus or minus 8. Can I break 8 down?
Yeah.
What is it going to break down to? 2 times 4. Oops, there's an equal sign right there. What's the square root of 4? So I get 2 root 2. How am I going to get x all by itself now? Add 3. So I get 3 plus or minus 2 root 2. Can I go 3 plus 2? No, they're not like terms right now. Okay, so that's my answer. 3 plus 2 root 2 and 3 minus root 2. Or 2 root 2. Brenna, what should I do here on this last one?
Add 17.
Yeah, adding 17. So those cancel. X plus 5, quantity squared, is equal to 49. What's next? Okay, well, let me work. So that's going to be, we're going to treat it just like this. How would I do that one? Brenna, how would I do it right there? How would I do that one? Square root. So I'm going to treat x and x plus 5 the same thing. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Remember, you need plus minus over there. Okay? Oh, don't forget the plus minus. So I get x equals negative 5 plus minus 7. Negative 5 plus 7 is 2. Negative 5 minus 7 is? Negative 5 minus 7. So I get the answer of 2. And I also get the answer of negative 12. All right. So we got up through number 17. So on worksheet 7, I want 18 through 26 done. Okay, so worksheet number 7. But then I also want on worksheet number 8, let's do the evens.
Mr. Stirrup,
Talk to me.
which 18 do you want us to start from?
The first 18. The x squared plus 8 equals 0. Yeah, it goes 18, 18. Don't hold it against us because math teachers can't number and count things.
18.
So 18, 18, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26.
Yeah, I mean, I thought you guys were supposed to be teaching us math.
Yeah, don't hold that against us, pal.
Oh my
Why do you think we keep saying, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because we're trying to figure out what we want to be. Does that make sense? So I won't see you all tomorrow because it's that testing day. But then on Thursday, this will be a really good review into the test.
Wait, so tomorrow, we just, the first thing we do is like, Tuesday morning, we just go to our testing place?
Yep.